Here's how you customize animations in Hyprland. So right here, we have the general section, right? So what this describes is basically the syntax of an animation. So we start off with name, whether it's turned on or off, the speed, and then something known as a curve, which is a Bezier curve, which is going to come later on. I'll just explain that. And then we have a style. So right now, as you can see, I've designed my own animation, which I call slipstream, okay? Where this is the kind of animation that you have. So it's very sliding focused. Everything slides in and out, and that's that. So let me show you what this animation actually looks like. Okay, so if we open the animation file, which is in config, hyper, modules, animations, animations.conf. And by the way, if you're wondering what this modules folder is all about, it's a term I coined called modularity. I cover it in detail in the first link in the description, along with how to make beautiful and blazing fast setups like this one, where you have a custom theme switcher and you can change your theme and whatnot. So if you want that, go ahead and click the first link in the description and check it out. Okay, now for this one, we'll just open animations.conf. And as you can see here, I have sourced a file called slipstream.conf. So I'll just open that. Animations slipstream.conf, and this is what we have here. Okay, so this is the same syntax for the animation that you saw. Let's just move this over, and as you can see here, if I zoom in, yeah. So we start off with this animation for the windows. Okay, we give it a name, and this one is going to be for the windows. Then whether it's on or off, so it's all one, so it means that it's turned on. Then for the speed, we have 7. And then the Bezier curve we're using over here is going to be my Bezier, which is the name of this curve. Now, what exactly is a Bezier curve? Well, it's basically a set of mathematical instructions for you to draw a curve. So you can think of a Bezier curve kind of like a magic pen, where you have these 4 coordinate points. So this Bezier is what's called a cubic Bezier. So it was created by this one guy, one French engineer called Pierre Bezier in the 1960s, I believe, when he was designing car bodies for the car company Renault, right? The French car company was designing car bodies for them, and he made use of these instructions for designing that. So what we have over here is basically 4 different control points, as we say. Okay, so the first control point defines where the curve starts. The fourth control point defines where the curve ends. And then these 2 control points in the middle kind of act like magnets to guide the magic pen as it's tracing out the path of the curve, okay? So you don't have to concern yourself too much with how exactly a Bezier curve works. Just know that in the case of animations, we're going to use this in order to map out how exactly our animations are going to look. So whether our animations are going to be a bit bouncy, like as you can see over here, it's a bit bouncy. So if I do that, the window shifts a little bit to the right and then finally settles down, or whether it's going to be something much more linear, like if I just switch a workspace and then come back, it's just going to settle down in place without doing the bouncy stuff. Okay, that's what the Bezier curve dictates. Okay, now these are the animations that we have so far. Let's scroll down and let's see what else we have got. Okay, now here we have the animation tree. So inside global is basically everything that Hyprland has, okay? And under that, you have windows, okay? So these are basically how each of your windows is going to appear, okay? In terms of opening and closing and whatnot. And if you'll notice, there is a styles section, okay? We have a style section here as well. So let's just show you how that works. So for windows in, I've set that to slide. So for windows, these are the different styles we have. So we have slide, pop in, or gnomed. So let's just change this from slide to pop in and see what kind of difference it makes. Okay, write the changes. And as you can see over here, we see a pop in animation for the windows, and doesn't matter what window we open. Okay, it's going to be the same. So we see this pop in animation. And then we have another style called gnomed. So as you can probably guess from the name, this is going to be very inspired by Gnome's animations. So once you do that, it's kind of like the window just pops up and then expands from the top and the bottom in order to give you this really cool effect. Okay, and that's that. That's it for these styles when it comes to the windows. Now we have a bunch of other settings over here which we'll just cover. So let's go through each of these. Okay, windows in and out, pretty simple. Windows move is, as it says over here, everything in between, which includes moving, dragging, and resizing. So where you would use Windows Move is basically where you change out the Bezier curve. Let's say you did not want to use the same curve for switching windows around, and then you wanted to keep the window moving part, like this animation, a bit more linear if you want. So you don't have as much action going on over here, just extremely smooth flipping between, okay, the two different sizes of the windows. So you could create another Bezier, okay, just copy and paste this, call this something like move Bezier, okay, and then you change the coordinates and stuff. You change the control points rather, change that up, and then you use that for Windows Move. Okay, I'll just leave that the same for now. Then for layers, we have, again, style, slide, and we have slide, pop in, and fade, right? So what is a layer? Well, Waybar is a layer, right? So a layer is basically not a window, but it is in fact a layer. So if you take a look at this, this is Rofi, right? Rofi, being an application launcher, is considered a layer by Hyprland. So it doesn't consider this to be a window, but it considers it to be a layer that's displayed over top of windows, kind of like an overlay. Same thing for Waybar. It considers Waybar an overlay, or a layer, as we actually call it. And so it doesn't act like a usual window, which is why if you've ever tried to display shadows on Waybar before, you'll know that it's a bit of a pain to actually get it to display properly because it's not like any other window. You see, if it were a normal window, like let's say this kitty window that I have, for example, okay, we'll just type in niche for fun. Okay, as you can see here, there are a bunch of shadows, right? If you try to get these same shadows to work on Waybar, for example, if Waybar was an actual window, right? If Waybar was your normal everyday window like this one over here, you wouldn't have any problems with displaying the shadows, but because it's not, you're going to have to go through a bunch of more loopholes in order to get the shadow to display for each of these pill-shaped islands and whatnot properly, okay? And that is basically what a layer is. Now, let's see. We haven't added it for this one specifically, but what we can do is create another animation, call it, okay, for layers in. And here we're going to use 1 for turned on, 7, okay, 7 for the speed. And then what we can do else is just type in my Bezier for the name, and then the style we can change it to slide. Okay, once you do that, ideally what it's supposed to do is basically slide, but as you can see, there is definitely a difference. Even though it's not sliding, you notice that the curve is a bit different. Now the reason why it's not sliding was because I'm pretty sure there is an extra config that's actually preventing it from doing that. So if we just go to layer, yep. So we have this layer rule, which says Rafi is going to have an animation of pop-in and 95%. So if we just comment this out, yep, as you can see over here, it slides extremely well. Okay, then for layers out, for layers close as well, we can change the same thing and then just make it like so, right? So copy this, paste it. For layers out, we can keep the same slide animation, so it just slides out, comes from the bottom and then goes back. Now the thing is, because it's not a pop-in animation, we can't actually control where exactly the window pops out from, so it just comes all the way from the bottom of the screen instead of just fading in and appearing from, let's say, over here. So that is a bit of a catch. If you wanted that effect, you're going to have to go with the pop-in style, but if you're okay with the window coming all the way from the bottom, then slide should be good for you, right? Okay, then next up we have fade as well. Inside fade, fade in for window open, that's what fade in is for, then fade out for window close, and then we have a bunch more fade settings, so you could just read through all of this, okay? Then let's see, for border. Now, if you want to have a sort of RGB kind of setup where you have one color over here, which is a sort of gradient that's mixing with another color that is in the bottom right corner, and then you want the border color to keep going round and round, you could use border and create an animation for that. Okay, now that's what border is about. Then for border angle, here you can animate the border's gradient angle as well. So whether you want it to go this way, which is exactly 45 degrees, or something like 60 degrees, which is probably like so, right? Something like so, and whatnot. That's basically that. Then for workspaces, now here's where it gets a little bit fun. So we have a bunch more different styles for the workspaces. We have slide, slide vert, slide fade, and slide fade vert. The vert obviously stands for vertical. So if you are using a vertical bar, maybe something like AGS, or you figured out Quickshell, so you have a Quickshell bar over here, or even something like Fabric, where you have a vertical bar, or even Elcowar's wacky widgets, as we say, right? So if you had a vertical bar, what you could do was basically get the workspace switching to be vertical as well. So let's just show you what that looks like, right? So workspaces, right here, style is set to slide. We can change it up. So we can change slide to slide vert, okay? Not for this one, but here, slide vert. And what happens is it basically makes the windows slide vertically. That's it. Then we also have fade. So if you want to fade the workspaces out, this is what you could do. Fade would just fade them in and out. Then we have slide fade. So as the window is sliding, it's going to fade. Okay, as you can see here. So as you're switching the workspace, the windows are moving, and as they're moving, the fading effect is being seen, like so. And then we have slide fade vert. So same thing, but just vertical. We'll just switch this back to slide. Okay. Then, yep, same thing for the workspaces in and out, right? So in probably means that you're going into a workspace. Out means that you're going out of a workspace. And special workspace. So the special workspace is basically opened when you hit super or your mod key and then basically S, which as you can see, this is the special workspace. So you have different animations for that as well. So if you wanted to fade it in, you could do so. If you wanted to get a vertical slide fade and whatnot, you could add in the same thing over here. Just create a new animation and then pass in the style option to be different. Then for zoom factor. So I covered this in one of my previous videos, but basically Hyprland allows you a zoom feature where you can basically set up your keybinds to allow you to press a certain keybind and then get your compositor, right, get Hyprland to zoom in on the cursor. So kind of like a Mac zoom cursor effect where if you move your cursor around, the camera in this case, or yeah, basically the focusing camera is just going to follow the cursor around. So you can just go wherever you want to and then have the camera sort of follow you, but just zoomed in, if you get what I mean, right? And you can change the animations for that as well. But here you don't have any different styles because this is just inheriting global's, styles. So if it were something like Windows, you'd have more styles, okay? These three are children of Windows, but this zoom factor thing is a child of global itself, so you don't have any of those styles. Okay, now this is just a note about the border angle thing, so you can just check that out. And apart from that, okay, here's where I mentioned the Bezier curves earlier. So you can define your own Bezier curve using the Bezier keyword, which we have done over here. Okay, so name is going to be the name of your choice, and then x, y, and x1, y1. These are the coordinates of the Bezier, right? I mean, control points. If you want to design your own curve, you can just go to cssportal.com. You can middle click, by the way, to open in a new tab. But here, as you can see, this is the starting point, and then this is the ending point. So this one would be starting, this one would be ending. Of course, it's not the same because this is a completely different Bezier, but you get the idea, right? So here we have a bunch of different ones you can try out. Ease in sign, and we have ease out sign, in out, ease in quad, cubic. You can do that. As you can see, you can just pick whichever one that you want. Adjust it like so. Check it out. And then make your own curve. If you, however, wanted to choose from a list of curves, then you can just check out easings.net. Here is where you could try a bunch of different curves. So ease in is very smooth and linear. This one's a bit too slow. It doesn't have the same feel to it. Okay. This one too. You can just look through each of these and see which one's your favorite. So cubic seems pretty nice. So it starts off a bit fast and slows down in the center and then speeds up again. Same thing for ease in cubic and ease out cubic. This one would probably work well for a window close animation. Ease in cubic probably for a window open animation. Of course, if you wanted to get both, you could of course use the ease in out cubic version. And same thing for quint. This one looks even cleaner, especially when you visualize it in a window form, like as you're opening a window and whatnot. And then you have circ as well, and then elastic. This one's very similar to the one that I'm using here. And then, yes, you can basically check out all of these ones. And if you want to pick any one, just click on this and then click on copy. All you need is basically these control points. So you can just copy the points and paste them over here after your Bezier's name. As you can see, this is the example that they've given. So if you want to replace, let's say you wanted to just copy this and paste it, this is what it would look like. Okay, now if we pick something else, we pick something like ease in out cubic, you just copy the chords and then paste that in over here. Yup, as you can see, looks pretty neat. It's a bit slow. Of course, you can speed it up. Pretty sure it allows you to speed it up. If not, you can create your own. You can just paste this as a starting point on cssportal.com, and then you can change it to your needs. Okay, then extras, basically what we're discussing is the same style thing that I mentioned earlier. And okay, this one's really cool. So let's just revert this back to how it was. Okay, and we'll do this as well. So as you notice, this Rafi has a pop-in animation, which doesn't quite start from, something really small to becoming something really big. It actually starts from 95% of its original size and then scales up to 100%, which is what's happening with 95% after the pop-in word over here. So if you want to scale from, let's say, 60% of the Windows size, and then you wanted to go from 60 to 100%, this is what that would look like. So basically, if you want the pop-in animation to start from a certain percentage of the Windows size, you just have to put that percentage after the pop-in name, okay, in the animation section. And then that's just going to get you this. You don't have to do it in a layer rule like I've done here for Rafi. You can, of course, do it in the animation section itself. So let's see here. You can specify a minimum percentage animation. Okay, so let's say instead of slide, you set it to pop in for the Windows. You set this to pop in, and then you just mention the percentage, something like 90% after that. Okay, as you can see, that is what 90% pop in looks like. Okay, now here, you can also specify a movement percentage for slide fade and slide fade word. So this basically means how much in percentage wise the windows are actually going to move before you switch to another workspace. Okay, so if I show you slide fade and then set this to, let's say, 50%, so the windows are going to move 50%. And as you can see, there's a bit of a residue for the windows until they finally disappear. You can also set this to something like 20%. So just do that. Set it to 20. See what you get. The windows move about 20% until they finally disappear. You can also set it to 10 just to see the effect. And yeah, that should pretty much be it. Then for animation style in windows and layers, you can also specify a forced side, which means if we have slide over here, so let's just comment this out. We'll comment this out. And hold on. And for Rafi, let's say for layers, slide, you can pick a direction, right? So let's say slide left. I want it to slide from the left, and when it's going out, I want it to slide from the right. Okay, so it comes here, and then it should ideally go out from the right side, but even if it doesn't, you get the drill. Like, this is what it's supposed to do. You got rid of this, pretty sure it would... Okay, no. It just wants to go its own way, but you get the idea. And that should pretty much be it for animations. If you want to know how to make a blazing fast and beautiful setup, like the one that you see over here, okay, go ahead and click the first link in the description. I show you exactly how to make a custom theme switcher like this one, along with everything else that you could possibly need to know so that you don't have to go around looking for everything yourself. So go ahead and click the first link in the description. If you liked the video, hit like. If you loved it, hit subscribe, and I will see you next time. Stay rising.